They were born in battle and raised in legend. Giants forged not from iron, but from loyalty. This is the Irish Wolfhound, the dog that walked with warriors and slept beside kings. Long before Ireland was written in ink, it was carved in myth. A land of mist, stone, and stories where courage was a currency and loyalty a law. In that age when heroes bore swords and druids whispered to the gods, one creature stood beside man in both war and peace, the great Hound of Ireland. Their origins stretch so far into history that they dissolve into legend. Ancient writings call them Cú Fáil, the wolf dogs. They were not pets, they were protectors. Each one stood taller than a man's waist, muscles rippling beneath rough coats, eyes bright with purpose. The Celts bred them for one reason: to hunt what others feared. Wolves, boar, even men. When the forests echoed with howls, the Irish Wolfhound answered with silence, then fury. They ran like thunder through heather and snow, striking with a mix of grace and inevitability. In the ancient Gaelic world, they were not simply animals. They were symbols. To own one was a mark of power. Only kings and chieftains were allowed to keep them. And when a warrior fell in battle, the hound often refused to leave his body, standing guard until dawn. Poets wrote of them, bards sang of them, even enemies spoke of their nobility. They were the spirit of Ireland given form, fierce in war, faithful in love. One of the oldest tales speaks of Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Ulster, a hero who, as a boy, killed a mighty guard dog in self-defense. Out of honor, he vowed to take its place until a new hound could be raised. From that day forward, he was known as the Hound of Chulainn. It was not just a name, it was a declaration that to be a hound was not to be less than human, but something greater: to guard, to serve, to love without fear. And so, for centuries, the great hounds walked among heroes. They were gifted between rulers as symbols of respect. The Roman consul himself once wrote of receiving 7 such dogs from Ireland, beasts so large they could rival lions in battle. When the Romans marched through foreign lands, even they looked upon these hounds with awe. But the Irish Wolfhound was never defined by war alone. When the swords were sheathed and fires burned low, they lay beside children, heads heavy on hearths, hearts calm and patient. For every ounce of their strength, they carried equal gentleness. They were the paradox of Ireland itself, wild yet noble, fierce yet kind. To look upon one was to see power under control, courage without cruelty. They were the ultimate protector, a warrior who chose peace until peace was broken. In those early centuries, when clans fought for honor and kingdoms shifted like tides, the Irish Wolfhound remained constant. They asked for no reward but trust, no command but love. They were not chained because they did not need to be. Their bond with their people was deeper than obedience. It was faith. For 1,000 years, they guarded Ireland's castles, led its hunts, and carried its legends. But as time passed and empires rose beyond the sea, even the mightiest hounds could not escape history. The wars that once made them necessary would one day make them scarce. The wolves they hunted would vanish, and with them, the hound's purpose. But in those early days, when kings ruled from stone halls and warriors rode beneath banners of emerald and gold, the Irish Wolfhound was more than a dog. It was a guardian of a people, a keeper of their courage, and a reflection of their soul. Its paws left marks not just on the soil of Ireland, but on the memory of mankind. Ireland has always been a land of guardians. Stone fortresses stood watch over green valleys, heroes guarded honor, and by their side, always, stood the Irish Wolfhound, silent, steadfast, and ready. To understand their spirit, you must imagine the world they were born to defend. The forests were thick, the winters long, and the night alive with predators. Wolves stalked the countryside in packs, preying on livestock and travelers. To face them required something beyond courage. it required a creature with both the body of a warrior and the soul of a friend. The Irish Wolfhound was that creature. They didn't chase for pleasure. They hunted to protect. When danger drew near, they moved without hesitation, a blur of grey fur and thunderous grace. In battle, they charged beside soldiers, their size enough to terrify enemy horses. They brought down wolves with a single strike, their jaws closing like the final note of a war drum. But when the battle ended, they returned to quiet, lying at the feet of their masters, heads resting against armor still warm from war. No dog embodied balance like the Irish Wolfhound. They could be both weapon and warmth, fighter and friend. They were so revered that no king would travel without them. They guarded royal chambers, stood at the gates of castles, and marched in processions like living symbols of Ireland's pride. When a chieftain was buried, it was said the hound sometimes followed Dash, lying down beside the grave, refusing food or water, as if guarding their master beyond death. But their loyalty wasn't born of command, it came from understanding. The wolfhound didn't serve because it had to. It served because it chose to. And so, while other breeds were trained through dominance, the Irish Wolfhound was shaped by mutual respect. They responded not to fear, but to feeling. Their eyes met yours, and something ancient passed between you. A silent oath, I will stand by you, no matter what comes. Even enemies of Ireland feared them, and yet admired them. Foreign emissaries would beg to bring one home, offering gold, horses, or armor in exchange. But the Irish guarded their hounds as fiercely as their honor. To gift one was to give a piece of Ireland itself. Legends say that in those days, no home was safe without a wolfhound at its door. They watched over children as if they were their own, walked alongside herds in the fields, and patrolled castle walls beneath the moon. Their presence alone was enough to deter danger. For even the bravest thief knew that to face a wolfhound was to face fate itself. But perhaps what made them truly sacred was their compassion, because strength without mercy is just violence, and mercy without strength is just hope. The Irish Wolfhound carried both in perfect measure. There are stories of wolfhounds rescuing wounded men from battlefields, of them shielding infants during raids, and of one who, when accused of killing its master's child, was slain in grief. Only for the child to be found later, safe, beside the body of a slain wolf. The master wept, for he had killed his truest friend. That hound's name was Gellert, and though the tale echoes through centuries and countries, its heart belongs to the Irish Wolfhound, a story of love, loyalty, and tragedy intertwined. They were more than protectors. They were moral mirrors, reminding mankind that courage means nothing without compassion. And as Ireland changed, as steel replaced stone and peace replaced battle, these giants found new ways to guard the people they loved. They no longer fought wolves. They fought loneliness. They watched over hearths instead of gates. They became not just defenders of homes, but defenders of hearts. Still, their legend never dimmed. To see an Irish wolfhound walk, head high, tail low, stride calm and measured, was to witness nobility in motion. They were Ireland's living myth. The last echo of an age when loyalty was sacred and courage was pure, and for centuries they held that place proudly, until the day came when Ireland's enemies disappeared, and so did its wolves. The protector's world was changing, and soon the giants who had once stood at the heart of Ireland would begin to vanish, not from weakness, but from victory. For centuries, the Irish Wolfhound stood as Ireland's living legend, a creature of strength, loyalty, and grace. But even legends can fade, and as the world changed, so too did its need for giants. When the last wolf fell in Ireland, the purpose of the Wolfhound fell with it. The hound that once protected villages and kings suddenly had no enemy left to fight. Peace, the very thing they had fought to defend, became their undoing. The great hunts ended. Wars quieted. and slowly the giants began to vanish. By the 18th century, the once proud breed had become a ghost. Travellers to Ireland wrote of having heard of the great hound, but few had actually seen one. Those that remained were thin, frail shadows of their ancestors, kept more as curiosities than companions. Their size dwindled. Their numbers fell. And in time, the Irish Wolfhound, once feared by kings and cherished by poets, was declared extinct. But destiny, it seemed, was not finished with them, because among the quiet fields of Ireland, there were still a few who remembered, who refused to let the story end. One of them was Captain George Augustus Graham, a soldier, scholar, and man of unshakable devotion. In the 19th century, he made it his life's mission to bring the Irish Wolfhound back from the edge of myth. Graham scoured the country for survivors, any trace of the bloodline that had once ruled Ireland's hills. He found only a handful, tall, gaunt, noble even in their frailty. From them, he began the impossible, to resurrect a legend. He studied ancient records and artwork, measuring proportions and comparing descriptions. Then, through careful and ethical breeding, with Scottish deerhounds, Great Danes, and Borzoi, he began to restore what time had taken. But Graham wasn't chasing size or fame, he was chasing spirit. He sought to rekindle that unique blend of power and gentleness. That had once defined the Irish Wolfhound, the warrior's courage and the poet's heart. The task took decades, but little by little the hound of heroes returned. They grew tall again, taller than any breed in the world. They moved with quiet dignity, their deep chests and long legs echoing their ancient lineage. And when they stood in profile, the soul of Ireland seemed to stand with them. By the turn of the 20th century, the Irish Wolfhound was reborn, no longer the hunter of wolves, but a symbol of a nation's endurance. They became living history, a connection between Ireland's warrior past and its modern spirit. Each one was a monument not of stone, but of heart. And when the world once again descended into war, some wolfhounds even marched beside soldiers. Not as fighters, but as comforters. Their presence alone was enough to steady the frightened, to remind weary men that gentleness could still exist amid destruction. After World War I, they returned home once more, to gardens instead of battlefields, to families instead of armies. But the look in their eyes was the same, calm, proud, eternal. Captain Graham never lived to see how far his dream would go, but because of him, the Irish Wolfhound did more than survive. It endured. Today, every wolfhound carries his legacy, and the legacy of every chieftain and warrior who once stood beside one. Their story became not just a tale of survival, but a parable of faith. Faith that what is noble cannot truly die, that what is loved deeply enough will always find its way back. Even now, when you see an Irish wolfhound standing in silence, its massive frame still, its gaze steady, you're not just looking at a dog. You're looking at a living resurrection, a creature that refused to be forgotten, a soul too large for extinction, a legend reborn from loyalty alone. Stand before an Irish wolfhound, and you'll understand why kings once bowed to them. They are taller than any other dog, their heads rising to a man's chest, their gaze level with his heart. But what surprises most people isn't their size, it's their silence, their calm, their gentleness. For all their grandeur, the Irish Wolfhound does not thunder through life. He moves softly, as if aware that his very presence bends the air around him. Those who know the breed often say the same thing. You don't own a wolfhound, you share your life with one, because inside that towering frame beats a heart of almost unbearable tenderness. They were bred to face wolves, yet they will step carefully around a sleeping child. They once guarded castles, yet they will wait patiently at a door rather than push it open. Their nature is one of balance, A quiet nobility born not from dominance but from understanding. There's a reason many call them the gentle giants. They don't bark to prove their power. They don't boast of their strength. They simply are. Spend a day with one, and you'll see that their presence changes the rhythm of a room. They bring peace, a calm that asks nothing, demands nothing, but fills every space like music played just beneath hearing. When they sit beside you, they don't press for attention. They wait for your hand to find them. When you're sad, they don't rush to comfort. They simply stand closer, as if saying, "You're not alone." That is their gift. The Irish Wolfhound loves without noise, protects without violence, and comforts without words. Even their play is measured. They will kneel to meet smaller dogs, bend their heads for children, and move with a kind of restraint that feels almost human. They are aware of their size, and they treat it as responsibility, not privilege. That is what sets them apart from every other breed. Their self-control born of empathy. It is said that no other dog has eyes like a wolfhound. There is age in them, not of years, but of memory. When they look at you, it feels as though they see everything. Your joy, your exhaustion, your kindness, your mistakes, and forgive them all. They live not for command, but for companionship. And though they are loyal, their loyalty feels more like friendship than servitude. You don't order an Irish Wolfhound. You ask, and when they respond, it feels less like obedience and more like understanding. Even in their aging years, they remain dignified. They walk slower, but never lose their grace. They seem to know that their time is short. The giants are not meant to stay long among men, and yet in the years they do share, that they leave a lifetime's worth of peace behind. There's a story told among breeders of a wolfhound who, during a thunderstorm, found his owner's child trembling under a table. Instead of barking or pacing, he lay beside the boy and placed his massive head across the child's lap. They stayed like that until the storm passed. When it did, the boy was asleep, and the hound, still watching the window, was guarding both the child and the silence that followed. That is who they are. Not warriors, not hunters, but healers of hearts they never broke. Their gentleness is not weakness, it is wisdom. The wisdom of creatures who have seen violence and chosen calm, who have lived in the shadow of war and chosen warmth. They are reminders that power need not roar to be real. That true courage often looks like kindness, and that strength, when born of love, can protect without ever needing to destroy. For centuries they were bred to chase down death. Now they walk through life teaching what it means to live. So when you see an Irish Wolfhound resting quietly beside its family, know that you are not looking at just a pet. You are looking at the culmination of 1,000 years of devotion. The spirit of Ireland, gentle in body, mighty in soul, and eternal in love. Every legend ends, but some refuse to fade. The Irish Wolfhound is one such legend. It was born from myth, forged by men, and carried forward by love. And though the battles have ended and the wolves are gone, its legacy still walks. In every stride, every gaze, every heartbeat that echoes through time. The world around them has changed beyond recognition. Cities now stand where clans once camped. Screens have replaced songs, but the Irish Wolfhound remains the same. Quiet, loyal, timeless. They are no longer guards of fortresses, but guardians of peace. Not soldiers of war, but sentinels of the soul. When one enters a room, conversations fall silent, not from fear, but from reverence. Because they do not enter a space. They fill it. Their presence commands respect not through dominance, but through dignity. They do not bark for attention because they do not need to. Their size speaks, their silence completes it. In Ireland, they remain a symbol of identity, a living monument to the country's strength and softness. They are carved into crests, painted on banners, woven into the nation's folklore. To the Irish, the Wolfhound is more than a dog. It is Ireland itself. Noble, brave, and kind. Even today, they serve as mascots of regiments, standing tall in parades, their calm composure mirroring the soldiers they once marched beside. No other breed embodies both power and humility so completely. Their loyalty is not loud. It's lived quietly, daily, and deeply. Owners often describe a strange magic in their company, as if time slows when a wolfhound rests beside you. They make the world gentler simply by existing, and when they leave, because all giants must and far too soon, they do so as they lived softly, with grace. There are few losses heavier than that of a wolfhound, but those who've shared their years will tell you that the weight of grief is only proof of the love they carried. Perhaps that is their true legacy. Not their height, not their history, but the way they remind us. That greatness is not measured in strength, but in gentleness. They teach without words. They forgive without question. They love without condition. In a world that runs too fast, they walk slowly, as if urging us to remember what truly matters. To stand before one is to see the best parts of humanity reflected back. Faith, patience, loyalty that does not break under time or trial. The Irish Wolfhound has no interest in glory, and yet it carries it effortlessly. It doesn't fight for power, because it already holds the kind that cannot be taken. Honor, that's why, centuries after its near extinction, it still inspires, because its story is not one of conquest, but of endurance. Not of war, but of heart. It teaches us that strength can be kind, and that love, true love, does not need words or promises or forever. It just is. When you see an Irish wolfhound standing at dusk, wind stirring its coat, eyes fixed on the horizon, you're looking at more than an animal. You're looking at a story written in muscle and memory, a living echo of every hero, every hearth, every human who ever dared to love something greater than themselves. Because that's what the Irish Wolfhound really is. A bridge between mankind and myth. Proof that legends can have fur and that loyalty can outlive kingdoms. In an age that forgets easily, they remind us what should never be forgotten. That courage is quiet, that kindness is power, and that to guard something, or someone, with your whole heart, is the noblest act of all. The Irish Wolfhound is no longer the hound of war. It is the guardian of memory, the keeper of calm, the last great hound of Ireland, and perhaps the greatest heart the world has ever known.